This is a journey into sound.
Did you ever have an opportunity to meet Cocteau?
No, I didn't, but I could have. I was in Paris at the time. It never occurred to me, I was such an idiot, of course. It never occurred to me that, though I had seen, I was there in '54, I'd seen the movies already, but it never occurred to me to see him because I never thought I would write an opera. I was already writing music, but I didn't think about that at all. But I did exchange a letter with Jean Cocteau, because in order to get the rights, I met Monsieur Jarvi, who in the film plays the part of Sageste. That man, I met him in his 70s. I went to Paris to meet him, to have a talk with him. And I explained to him in French and in English what it was I was trying to do, which was to take, I was reversing the process of taking an opera and turning it into a movie. I was trying to take a movie and turning it into an opera. And that's exactly what I did. It's word for word. There's not one word that's been left out or been added to this text. It's the original text. It's the original text that was written for the... I took the scenario and made it into a libretto. And I had a long talk with Jarvi about it, and he didn't really get it at all. And finally, by that time, we had been having lunch for a while. We'd had at least 2 bottles of wine. He said, "Oh, let's just do Cocteau and this and that." And I had the rights. And then he never saw the piece. He wrote to me a few years later, because I wrote to him and said, "It's being performed near where you are. Could you go?" And he tried to go, and he wrote back his car broke down, so he never saw it. So, but then this is the tricky part. Then I had to get the Le Droit Moral, which is it's a kind of, we don't really have that in the States. It's called the moral rights. Everyone who was in the movie had a certain ownership of their part. It's called Le Droit Moral. So in order to get the rights, I had to have permissions from everyone in the film. The only one that was still alive, and that's not completely true, I found that there was another one, but the only one that was still alive was Jean Cocteau. And I wrote him. And I wrote him, I said, Chez Monsieur Cocteau, I'm doing this work, I'm taking the original, and I had also to get the rights from Madame Auric, who was that's another story. I don't want to have time for that story. But and he said, and I said, I need to have, I didn't even say that. I said, "We're performing the work, would you please come and see it?" I didn't ask him for the rights. It was a little occasion of that. And he wrote back a letter and said, "My dear Mr. Glass," he said, I'm very pleased that you wrote me. However, I was very close to Jean Cocteau, and in his memory, I'm not able to come and see your work. However, I wish you all the best. I interpreted that to mean that I had Le Droit Moral.
So to do exactly what you said, to have to make an opera out of a film, and you took the exact screenplay and turned it into a libretto.
Monsieur Jarvi didn't believe me. In fact, I wrote to him and I said, "Could you send me the libretto?" He sent it back with a note saying, "Please underline all the omissions and changes you've made." I took the libretto and I put it back in another envelope and mailed it right back to him. And he could see that there was not one word changed.
So how was that process different than some of the other work that you've done? Did you try to eliminate the film from your mind in terms of pace and the way things affect?
Of course, it takes longer to sing than to speak. But conversely, speech, which goes by very rapidly, is sometimes hard to sing rapidly. So I had that problem as well. But in this case, I could stretch things out so that the stage work is about 15 minutes longer than the film. The film is, I think, maybe 90 minutes, and the stage work should be a little bit...
Just shy of 2 hours, yeah.
You pick up that much time. And so basically, I was freed in one way. Now, there are a lot of interesting things that happen when you do this kind of thing, this kind of translation. For one thing, I understood at one point that one of the big differences from seeing the film and seeing a stage piece is that when I see a film, I can only see what the cinematographer wants me to see. But when I'm looking at the stage, I can look at any place I want to. So that for someone like Sam has to be a very different kind of director. If he did this as a film, he couldn't do it the same way. You're dealing with an audience which is free to you're free to look at it in a different way. Right. There were no real changes except that the accident happens off stage, but it happens off stage in the film too.
Right.
You hear the sound of the motorcycle. Well, we didn't explain that to this audience, but Eurydice is killed by the messengers of La Princesse who are on motorcycles and mow her down on their bikes, but you don't actually see it. You hear a thud, and you hear. So in that way, it's like the film. But the other thing is that I was able to take the moments when they're together and to stretch them out, and the music then can begin to make, like that scene, that last thing we saw with, if you didn't, what she was doing, which we didn't explain to you, was that she said, well, we're going to go back. She said, I'm going to change this. We're going to have a different ending. And he says, well, how can you do this? She said, we're going back in time, and we're going to make a change. And he says, but that's not allowed. You're not allowed to go back. And she says, and that's when she says, in order for
a prophet to become immortal,
a sacrifice has to be made. So the sacrifice actually is herself. It goes. You all know the sonnet of Shakespeare that ends, "Death once dead, there's no more dying then." Well, that's what this is. That in order for Cocteau to become immortal, for Cocteau, Orphée, in fact, at that point, it gets very mixed up.
Nearly interchangeable.
To me, Cocteau runs through all these films, all three of them. And I think that was a very autobiographical effort. He did it after the war. He was certainly a master of the art. At the same time, it was only a few years away before the Nouvelle Vague began, and there were other writers around. Genet was around, Céline was around. There were other people who were, maybe Cocteau could have felt that he was not in the center anymore of the world that he had lived in. This whole idea of the immortality, see, these are very issues that a man like that, they might have been, for sure, I would say might have been, I would say for sure, he was involved with these ideas. So what they do, when they're standing there, you see poor, with the Atreides, he is trying to, he has to go back in time. And then she says, don't forget the gloves. Don't forget the gloves. The gloves are how they pass through the mirror that takes them back through the journey to the underworld. But at that point, and she says, you have to work. You have to travailler. But it reminded me, when I studied with Nadine Boulanger, she used to say to me almost, not only every day, but many times a day, il faut faire un effort. You must make an effort. I was taking these lessons with this lady some years later. I was thinking of, that was it. It was the same effort. It was the effort to create and the effort to go back in time. Now, Stephen Hawking said that the arrow of time points in only one direction. It turns out that may not be true. That's going to matter to us very much. If we encounter a black hole and you manage to get through it, you might be able to find that, but I doubt whether. I don't think that's going to happen to us. But this whole business about at the very end, and says to her, "What are they going to do you?" And she says, "Listen, you don't want to know. It's not funny." Otterby says, "It's not funny."
And Sagesse says it never is.
He says it's never funny, and we understand from that what Cocteau doesn't say, but which we know beyond a shadow of a doubt that death is going to be executed, and in some fashion which we can't imagine, and that the poet Orphée will become immortal.
Well,
that's the mechanism of the effort.
I could absolutely talk to you about a lot of things all night. You've had such an incredibly prolific career. It's very similar to Cocteau in a way. I can't think of any composer that has interacted with so many different aspects of art as you have, as anything from being a studio assistant to Robert Serra to interacting with Twyla Tharp, Richard Serra, and Twyla Tharp, and
I have to say that
David Bowie. I mean, every aspect of art.
When I was listening to this tonight, I think of I've done quite a few operas, but these three, and to me they're a trilogy, so.
You'd like to do the trilogy?
I've never seen the trilogy, but I've arranged it so that it could be done that way. I mean, I've organized it. I've organized the materials that way.
Calling all opera producers.
If you did the three operas, the six singers each would sing in four of the three. It works out very well. But anyway, I think this group of pieces it's not because of I think the conception that Cocteau had was very compelling, and it would maybe only be a person of my generation that would know that, because I was young enough, I was old enough at that age to know what Cocteau had done, but I don't know. But now when I see people coming, and you told me how people are moved by that there may be a new life for this kind of way of looking at it.
Well, that's a beautiful way for us to end. And what is it you're going to play for us?
I'm going to play three etudes, which were written almost during the same period. I tend to, things get mixed up a little bit. You won't hear the Orphée music in here, but I was thinking, I wrote the Orphée, I began, I think it was La Belle La Bête in 91. I think it did one in 93, and I think that did another one in 95. And these three are etudes from a set of etudes that were begun at that time. And I'm going to play number 1, 2, and 10, and I was told I had 15 minutes. I timed it this morning. It's exactly 15 minutes.
Well, an exciting 15 minutes. Philip Glass.